What's up, Wonders of London fans? It's me, Vincent, from Wonders of London, and it is autumn, as you can see with that leaf. Beautiful, gorgeous colours, but welcome to another one of our YouTube mini tours. And of course today we're doing Hyde Park, and I thought I wouldn't start just in Hyde Park. I'd show you something pretty cool. Over there we got the Wellington Arch, a memorial to Arthur Wellington. Now, one thing I always see as a tour guide and a general lover of walking is so many people try to cross. We're on Park Lane right now. So many people try to cross over Park Lane at this spot just by Hyde Park Corner, and that's one of the most dangerous things you can do in London. This is one of the busiest roads in London. In fact, if you come here onto Piccadilly Street, right by number 1 Park Lane, you actually have a way you could go under Park Lane and come out, avoiding all the cars. You can come out by Aspley House, which was the London residence of Arthur, Duke of Wellington. And of course, as you come here, you get some wonderful art, like the crest over there, with the lions over there, and you've got the Park Lane sign, and you've got beautiful art on the walls, giving you a bit of the history of the area. We've got the Ritz Hotel over here, the museum, the Egyptian Hall, and of course, the Fortnum and Mason clock. As we turn around, you've got a promenade to Hyde Park over here, and it's just beautiful to see. And of course the walls give you a bit of the history, like Park Lane was for centuries a narrow road bounded on its west side by a high brick wall enclosing Hyde Park. It wasn't until the 1820s with the building of Decimus Burton's Hyde Park Corner entrance, I do apologise if I said his name wrong, could be Decimus Burton's Hyde Park Corner entrance, that everything changed. As you can see walking around here, you have a detail of standard candelabra by Benjamin Smith, wonderful bits of art and history in the Park Lane subway. And if you've taken the entire Park Lane subway, you will come out right here on the other side, having avoided all of the cars at Aspley House. Now, of course, it is a bit not user-friendly for everyone. It's not very accessible. If you need, if you have mobility issues, it's not quite accessible. Unfortunately, for now, if you do have mobility issues, you will have to go to the other side. There we can see a cyclist trying to cross over. Could have come just down here. But if you do have mobility issues, you have this building, the Intercontinental Hotel on Park Lane, and the building next to it, the tall one over there, you do unfortunately have to walk all the way around there. That is the Hilton, Hyde Park. But by the Hilton, the tall building behind the Intercontinental there, you do have traffic lights. Alternatively, you can go via the Green Park and come over, and you can go through the Wellington Arch that you see over there, which is quite beautiful. But it does mean you have to go around a bit. But that is one way you can come through, much safer than going over Park Lane with no traffic lights. We've got 414 to Marble Arch going past, and just before it goes past, let's have a look at the Wellington Arch, which commemorates Arthur Wellesley, Duke of Wellington's victory over the French, over Napoleon in the Napoleonic Wars. So quite a beautiful structure that you see over there. Now, this area has a lot of stuff connected to Arthur Wellesley, including one Aspley House over here, which had the auspicious address of being number 1 London, and it is here that you can find the Wellington collection. And of course, it's technically still part of the family, but it is a museum that you can visit now, and it's part of English heritage as well. And they have lots of events, like special Regency events and murder mysteries right here, so there's quite a lot to do. But we're not here to check out the wonderful Aspley House. We are here to check out the amazing Hyde Park. And as we continue this way, you've got that Decimus Burton entrance, the gate, which is sometimes also known as the Hyde Park screen. And of course, this was commissioned by the Prince Regent, who would later become George IV. He wanted a grand entrance to Hyde Park, and it does not get grander than this. And in fact, the arch we were looking at earlier, the Wellington Arch, just there peeking from behind the trees, was meant to be part of the entrance, and it was supposed to be inside the park, meaning that you would get a phenomenal grand entrance to Hyde Park going through right there. But they eventually would put it on that roundabout island that we have over there, and it is still quite brilliant. You can actually visit the Wellington Arch and climb to the top and get wonderful views of Piccadilly Street and a bit of Hyde Park, Aspley House, and a bit of Park Lane. So it is quite a phenomenal thing. But here we have entered Hyde Park via the Hyde Park screen, or the Hyde Park corner entrance. Has a couple of different names, and such a majestic entrance right here by Aspley House. How gorgeous is that? Of course, we are firmly in Hyde Park, so let's go and explore the wonderful Hyde Park, guys. And of course here we have the horse guards coming in. Which is quite lovely to see them up close like this. And they're accompanied by the police right here in Hyde Park. Brilliant. Now, after having seen the wonderful horse guards coming through, how gorgeous was that? Let's check out another brilliant gate. Now, this gate is quite interesting. It is the Queen Elizabeth Gate. The Queen Mother, that is of course not our good Queen Elizabeth II. May she rest in peace. But this is the Queen Elizabeth Gate, and it's quite an interesting, wonderful gate. But it's split critics down the middle, almost, because you have about half the critics loving this gate, critics of architecture and gate building and whatnot, and the other half hating it. The ones who hate it called it a pantomime, saying it represented nothing of the Queen Mother, and it represented nothing of Great Britain. So what do you guys think? Do you like this gate? Let's have a closer look at it as we slowly approach it. In the centre you've got the Lion of England and the Unicorn of Scotland. And it is quite fantastic. It's the Queen Elizabeth Gate in Hyde Park. And simply phenomenal. The Queen Mother, may she rest in peace, died in 2002 at the grand old age of about 102, having been born in the year 1900. And this is a gate to commemorate her. Unveiled in 1993, however. But look at the detail that has gone into the design of this gate, with the plants going all around. I, for one, am in love and in awe of this beautiful and gorgeous gate. But what do you guys think? Let us know in the comments. But there you have it, two wonderful entrances right next to each other in Hyde Park, and there's so much to explore in Hyde Park. We do have a tour, two walking tours technically, the Hyde Park in Kensington Gardens tour, and South Kensington and the Parks tour, which follow different routes around the area. So do check them out if you're ever in London and you have the opportunity to do one of our many walking tours. But phenomenal. Sun's coming out. We can look back at the gates once again. Now, one of my favourite parts of the park, especially in autumn, are the colours, but more so I do love the colours of the park almost all year round, especially in the summer and spring, because of the rose garden. Over here we have the wonderful rose garden, and you actually have a sign here telling you a bit about the rose garden. And I like to call it a musical rose garden. It was designed by the landscape architects, as you can see over there, Colvin and Morridge, and opened in 1994. And in fact, the entrance is quite brilliant because it is modelled on a horn, a musical horn. So it's supposed to be as though you are playing music through a horn, and this is sort of the mouthpiece. The entryway is the mouthpiece of the horn, and when you come out on the other side, that is where the music is supposed to come out. Now, of course, we're in autumn, but luckily we do still have some flowers and roses. They used a couple of different styles of planting and gardening here, herbaceous planting and rose planting or gardening, and this is to get the scent of the roses and flowers to a really powerful sort of effect, which is quite brilliant. But one of my favorite bits is this, because you got a little bit of Alice in Wonderland history right here with the boy with fish sculpture in the center of it. And in fact, that's based on a real life boy whose parents were friends with Lewis Carroll, the author of Alice in Wonderland. In fact, the sculpture is called Fountain, and it was finished in 1860, designed by Alexander Munro. And of course, the model for the boy was Greville MacDonald, the older son of Munro and Lewis Carroll's friend George MacDonald. And Lewis Carroll actually did this little sketch over there of Greville MacDonald teasing him about his boy. And over here you can read a bit more of the story. Do feel free to make a screenshot so you can find out more about the story. But how wonderful is that? And of course, neighbouring Hyde Park is Kensington Gardens, where you do have quite a bit of Peter Pan mythology, or Peter Pan stories. We are going to do another video, so do give us a follow, hit the like button, subscribe, and the notification button, because we're going to do a video of Kensington Gardens as well, so do look out for that. But for now, we are in Hyde Park, and you actually have another bit. So this is where you come out, where the music comes out of the horn, and you can see all the colourful plants and flowers sort of imitating the musical notes of a wonderful musical piece. And there's quite a lot of musical history connected to Hyde Park. But look at these gorgeous flowers, and as we come through this way, we come out on another brilliant sculpture. But first, look at these lovely roses. Now, the sculpture you see beyond these yellow roses is Diana, goddess of the hunt, from Roman mythology, and it is quite a lovely sculpture. It was actually designed by Lady Theodora Gleichen, the first female member of the Royal Society of British Sculptors, and it was originally on Park Lane. Remember where we started? It was on a mansion in Park Lane. However, during World War II, we had something called the Blitz, where the Nazis and their allies were bombing London. And in fact, some of those bombs hit Park Lane. And in fact, on Park Lane, you have a wonderful, wonderful, sad sculpture about the animals of World War II, because they had no choice. And I will show you that sculpture later on, and we can talk a bit about that. But the mansion, it was in a sunken garden. The Lady Diana sculpture was in a sunken garden on a mansion in Park Lane. And that mansion was destroyed. When they came to rebuild Park Lane and make it wider, they actually found that the sculpture of Diana, goddess of the hunt rather, had actually survived. And they replaced it right here, eventually, in the Rose Gardens. How wonderful is that? We've got so many cool things. Look at those beautiful colours of autumn in the Rose Garden of Hyde Park, and I love that they're always changing the plants. I recommend coming to the parks once a season, because they always change the flowers on the flower beds to represent the season that we're in, so you always get to see some interesting colours, beautiful flowers, etc. The roses are perpetual, of course, but the other flowers, they do change, and it is quite nice. And one of the most interesting trees, because I can't quite say, I know it's a bluish purple right now, but this tree, nature is magnificent with all of its colours, because look at this sort of bluish green that we get on this particular plant. Depending on which side you look at it, in the shade it looks green, when the sun is hitting it, it looks a bluish purple right now in the autumn. As I make this video, we are of course in October, and it is quite a lovely thing to note. And speaking of trees, I'm going to show you my favourite tree in Hyde Park. Now, my favourite tree in Hyde Park is actually that tree that you see over there in the distance. How lovely is that? It's like a mystery tree, because you can actually go inside it. First, let's go around it from the outside to get a full view of this gorgeous tree, because we're currently walking into the sun. But as we go around this way, we'll be looking away from the sun, so you can see the majesty of this gorgeous tree a bit more. And the best thing, especially for late spring, all of summer and early autumn, before the leaves fall off, as you can see some of the leaves are already changing colour, is that you can actually walk into this wonderfully magical tree like this. beauty. If you come at the right time like now, you play around with your focus, you can get the sun and sky coming through the leaves there, creating that lovely photo opportunity with the rays coming around, and get the dancing light all around. And of course, very importantly, this tree is right next to one of the toilets. These toilets you need to pay for using your card, but they only cost 20p, and they're right there. But that is my favourite tree in Hyde Park. I also have a favourite tree in Kensington Gardens, but I will show you that favourite tree on the Kensington Gardens video. We're very lucky with the horses today. We've got a couple of police officers on the horses over there, and they're just going past one of the most amazing bits of musical history in Hyde Park, and it is none other than the wonderful Victorian Bandstand. Now, in the Victorian era, which is also the era where we have the elementary education system being founded. Now, before the elementary education system, we didn't have as many people who were literate in Britain. And of course, there weren't that many forms of entertainment. There was no television, no radio, no internet, etc. And of course, one of the only entertainments available was live music. So the Victorians were obsessed with building these wonderful bandstands, and you'd have these bandstands all across the country. Look at the autumn leaves there, just piled up in the centre. But you would have all these gorgeous bandstands around the country, and musicians would come here. And in the Hyde Park one, you would sometimes have as many as 3 concerts a week, free to the public, which was a simply phenomenal thing to have. And of course, it also gives us an insight into that great British sort of culture or heritage, that thing the British are so proud of, that keep calm and carry on. Because even during World War II, remember I told you, the Nazis were dropping bombs on London. One of the bombs hit Park Lane, where we started. And in fact, concerts continued through World War II when the bombs were dropping. One of the most famous is by Myra Hess, who started having wartime concerts during World War II in the National Gallery. And at one of those Myra Hess concerts, a bomb actually fell on the gallery, and everyone felt the National Gallery at Trafalgar Square vibrating, shaking. And one of the best things is the musicians, the band, never missed a beat. They continued to play even though the bombs were dropping. And it gives us an insight into that great British sort of idea of keep calm and carry on. And the concerts right here in Hyde Park where we are did continue to happen. To give an example, an American jazzman, a trumpet player, came to London and played at this very bandstand, and he described the experience as quite harrowing, quite terrifying, because every few minutes he had to put his hand on his hips while he was playing to check if his gas mask was fastened. How terrifying must that have been? But these amazing people continued. They kept calm and carried on. You'd have thousands of people coming to see the wonderful concerts here in Hyde Park, and they do still continue with concerts to this very day. In fact, speaking of music and concerts in Hyde Park, we have had so many. So much so that we have this thing I like to call, a musical fountain over here. And in fact, we had Queen performing in 1976 right here in Hyde Park, and the Rolling Stones performed to a crowd of almost 1 million, according to some sources, in 1969. We had Pink Floyd in 68. We had Live 8 in 2005. We had the Red Hot Chili Peppers in 2004, and Party in the Parks 99 to 2004. We had the BBC Proms, which still technically go on to this day. Nelson Mandela's 90th birthday was here, and of course Pavarotti performed in 1991 right here in Hyde Park. So much musical history is to be had here in Hyde Park. But one thing I really adore about the park are these avenues of trees. As soon as you get to this bit of the park, which is just between Hyde Park Corner and Speaker's Corner, we have Park Lane to the left over there. You have these marvellous avenues in the park. So beautiful. Do be careful, because you do have cyclists and cars over here, but it's such a wonder to marvel at. Now we're going to leave Hyde Park for a few moments over here just to show you the fountain, the memorial, sorry, I promised you earlier, and it is right there in the middle of Park Lane. Now we just have to wait for the green man to cross over, so see you on the other end. And there we have the green man, so we can cross over, leaving the park. And as soon as you leave the park, on this bit of Park Lane, very close to the Marble Arch, you have this wonderful but harrowing, sad, touching memorial to the animals of World War II. Of course, we've talked a little bit about World War II on this tour, but this is to the horses, the donkeys, the cows, the buffalo used in war, the camels, the goats, the sheep, the dogs. Look at that poor horse over there, collapsed from exhaustion. As you can see, they carried the artillery, the weapons, the armour, everything. We've got this one over here. The poor donkey carrying the packs, looking forlorn and sad, and we have the inscription there: animals in war, they had no choice. This monument is dedicated to the animals that served and died alongside British and Allied forces in wars and campaigns throughout time, and it continues up over here. You've got the artists' names there and the people who helped bring this sculpture to fruition. Of course, a very sad memorial on Park Lane over here. Very powerful. Now we can head back in the park to check out some more of the amazing memorials there are in the park. Now, as we're back in the park, have a look at these beautiful autumn colours in this avenue. Now, as we approach the end of this avenue, which I just did because I love the colours, we actually came down this way because Diana, goddess of the hunt, is not the only mythological figure, apologies, you can find in the park. We also have these amazing signposts, by the way, telling you where almost everything is, but Diana is not the only mythical figure or mythological figure you can find in the park. In fact, around this way we have the great Achilles of legend, and in fact you can find Achilles of myth and legend right here around Hyde Park Corner with the lovely little squirrel playing around there. We're coming at Achilles into the sun from behind, but we're going to go around. This once again is a memorial for Arthur, Duke of Wellington, and it is quite fantastic. And one of the amazing things about the park are all the different wonderful sculptures you can find right here. How amazing is that Achilles? To Arthur, Duke of Wellington, and his brave companions in arms, placed on this spot by command of His Majesty George IV. And one thing I like is how they've written 4 there, as in I, instead of IV. Next time you're walking around have a look at the clocks in London. We actually did a video of the clocks here on YouTube, and look at the number 4, how that's written. It is an interesting story, but we posted a video here a while ago, so you can go through the videos if you would like to find some amazing clocks in London and see how the number 4 is written. But the next sculpture is perhaps my favourite sculpture and memorial here in Hyde Park. This next memorial can be found just here by these beautiful plants. I do love the arrangement of the plants and the colours as we walk around here. And look at this beautiful autumnal tree with all the leaves. I love autumn. But here is perhaps my favourite sculpture in Hyde Park. I do love dragons. This is one of the majestic dragons in London, right here in Hyde Park. This sculpture is the Cavalry of the Empire Memorial for World War I, but also World War II. As we can see with the inscription, erected by the Cavalry of the Empire in memory of comrades who gave their lives in the war 1914 to 1919, also in the war 1939 to 1945. Of course, one of the most interesting things about it is the dragon that we have here. Look at this majestic beast. And it has been slain. As we can see, that's why the tongue is hanging out. You have the wings, the leathery wings there. But another brilliant bit, you have the names of the unfortunate people who gave their lives. And another crest here. Now here by the Serpentine Lake, some people call it the Serpentine Lake, we have some very beautiful birds. I love how they've each perched on one of these things there. But it is here by the lake where we have the last memorial for this part. I've got a couple more memorials to show you. I'll show them towards the end of the video. But this is so cool, isn't it? But by the lake on this side of the Serpentine, you've got a really interesting memorial. Let's go check it out. And if we come from the lake this way, you get some more wonderful colours of autumn. But it's so hard to spot this memorial. It's literally a boulder in and amongst the trees. Don't know if you guys can see it. I can see it with the naked eye. But let's get closer and admire these wonderful colours of autumn. But can you see it now? There's this wonderful memorial. If you're Norwegian, you must certainly visit this memorial because it was a stone erected by the Royal Norwegian Navy and the Norwegian Merchant Fleet in the year 1978. We thank the British people for their friendship and hospitality during the Second World War. You gave us a safe haven in our common struggle for freedom and peace. This is a World War II memorial. And if you come around the back, you have another inscription here, which I love this inscription. This boulder was brought here from Norway, where it was worn and shaped for thousands of years by forces of nature, frost, running water, rock, sand and ice, until it obtained its present shape. And now it is here in the United Kingdom of Great Britain, England, London, Hyde Park. And it is brilliant just to see this very old stone. It's simply magnificent. Now, did you know there are a couple of cool things? Well, there are a lot of cool things in Hyde Park. But one of them is a letterbox. You can send your letters or postcards directly from Hyde Park. And in fact, right next to that, you have a couple of interesting buildings, as well as flowers and plants. But the first building we just see a little bit of is this over here, where you have the Rangers office in the park. And then next to that you have the Hyde Park police station. Did you guys know that Hyde Park actually has its own police and the police station, which is this gorgeous building that you can see over here? It is magnificent. And we saw the mounted police earlier, and this is where they also keep their horses. So how lovely is this? And one thing I really like is right in front of the police station we have this lamp, which has purple and bluish on it. It is the police lamp in Hyde Park. How cool is that? And these are not the only buildings that you find in the park. In fact, the next building I'm going to show you is pretty cool. Look, almost like a painting, beautiful colours of autumn. The famous French philosopher Camus, Albert Camus, philosopher at any rate, said autumn is a second spring where every leaf is a flower, something to that effect. And we can see it perfectly exemplified by this tree, which is behind the building I wanted to show you earlier, because in front of this tree right there, hidden by these wonderful plants, is a little cottage, a little lodge of sorts. And a few years ago, some years ago, it went up for sale, and you could have purchased this lovely cottage for the mere sum of £4,050,000. Now, you best believe if I had £4,050,000 on me, I would have purchased this little lodge. You'd be living in Hyde Park, central London, and you have a police station right next door. The Rangers Lodge are your nearest neighbours, and then right next to the Rangers, about 30 seconds walk from here, is the police station in Hyde Park. How wonderful is that? This is a Serpentine Lodge, a private residence of course, so do look it up if you're looking for a new cottage or house for the mere sum. I know it looks small, I've never been inside, so I don't know how big it is on the inside, but guys, you get to live in Hyde Park. How cool is that? Now look over here, we saw the horse guards earlier and the police horses, but you can also go horse riding in the park. We won't see any horse riders today, but there is a spot in between Hyde Park and Kensington Gardens, stables, where you can hire horses and go horse riding. So you've got literally everything in the park. How wonderful is that? Next, I'm going to show you a view of some of the things you can see from the park. But I love autumn, guys. Beautiful shot there with the swan coming out of the water. But from here, if I zoom in, you can see just about in the distance there the Victoria Tower at the Houses of Parliament, and these are one of the views that you get. And I do think that Hyde Park in autumn is a painter's dream. Look at those colours. I just imagine Vincent van Gogh when he lived in London for 3 years, or Camille Pissarro when he fled France during the Franco-Prussian War, along with several other impressionists, including but not limited to Claude Monet. They must have come to Hyde Park to enjoy these gorgeous views in autumn. And here we are on the bridge in the park, which forms the border between Hyde Park and Kensington direction, Kensington Gardens in that direction. But of course this is Hyde Park, so let's have a look at Hyde Park and the Serpentine. How lovely is this view? With the clouds looking perfect. As I continue this way, I'm going to zoom in for you after I've crossed the middle of the bridge, because we do have a wonderful little view. Now if you have a really good camera, you can get a perfect shot from here, because you have in view the Victoria Tower at the Houses of Parliament that we saw earlier, and one of the Westminster Abbey towers in the distance there. Can you just make out those two towers with the flags? Of course, if you continue on, you get a little glimpse of the London Eye. Let's continue like this. Even just like this. This is beautiful and phenomenal. Of course, have a look at these wondrous autumn colours as we continue along. Beautiful. Now over here is a map of the two parks. We just crossed over the Serpentine Bridge, Serpentine Bridge. And it's quite nice just to see how big the park is. We've been exploring just this part, guys. And in the next video, we're going to explore this part on the other side of the water. How lovely is that? Now, over here, we have the Diana, Princess of Wales Memorial Fountain, which we're going to see a bit more in a few moments. But we're also in an area of the park that is now known as Serenity. Now Serenity, this part of the park, used to actually be known as Isis or Isis, and it was quite an interesting name. They had to change that particular name. We've got another little rose garden right here by Serenity, and you can see this massive sign that says "Welcome to Serenity." Now this area was kind of developed to raise money for this, the Lookout, which is a kind of educational centre for young people to come and learn about nature in London. Because in big cities like London, it's truly a big city, young people don't often have the opportunity to learn about nature, even though London is the greenest city of its size. And they plan to plant more than 20 million trees. Now, you may be wondering, why was this area known as Isis or Isis? Well, it's because of this sculpture, which is the centerpiece of what is now known as Serenity. This is an ibis kind of bird that you see over here. And of course, the ibis was one of, if not, the favorite forms of the Egyptian goddess, one of the nature goddesses from ancient Egypt, Isis. Isis. So this is the old Egyptian goddess Isis. And of course this is also connected to the Princess Diana Memorial Fountain, which is right here by the lake. Now here we are inside the Diana Memorial Fountain, and they say the water is refreshed regularly from London's water table, underground water, and it is quite fantastic. And I love how the water actually flows, and it flows in different ways and at different rates. And this is supposed to emulate Diana's life, because most of what she did, particularly her charity work, Princess Diana that is, her charity work rippled around the world and still affects people to this day. We can just see it with the charitable works that her children, Prince Harry and Prince William, do. And it is quite fascinating. And here they put some marble-shaped discs so that when the water comes down this way, it literally ripples, like Diana's effect, that rippling effect where everything she did be it charity, be it fashion, it would ripple around the world. And I think this is a beautiful, touching memorial. And of course, Diana worked with a lot of children in her life and her charities. And as such, this is in fact a paddling pool as well. So on a hot summer's day, you can come and dip your feet in. You're actually allowed to come and dip your feet in and walk through, and you get so many children running up and down here, which is a brilliant thing, I think. It's a very well thought memorial for Princess Diana, Lady Diana, and it is quite fantastic. And there you have it, we have two Dianas represented in Hyde Park. Now we are almost at the end of the tour. I don't have much left to tell you about, but a couple of things I do want to mention are to do with what we can quite obviously see over here. And we do talk a bit more about this on the actual walking tour, so if you ever have the opportunity, do feel free to do so. But you can see the filth, the bird filth, the bird poo. And earlier, if you remember, we saw the wonderful musical fountain telling us about all the bands that performed here, and that was surrounded by litter. Now this is two things in one, because one thing we mustn't do in Hyde Park is feed the wildlife, especially feeding them improper food. I've seen people feeding the birds Big Macs from McDonald's. I have to think twice before I have one of those. But what happens, one of the things that happens is when we give them improper food, particularly things like bread, especially white bread, they get diarrhea and they go to the toilet everywhere, as you can see over here. So we do talk a bit more about what not to do when feeding, why not to feed the animals. And in fact, I'll show you some of the side effects from feeding the animals, especially feeding them improperly, in a few moments. But another thing is the litter. Now there are so many of those gigantic bins in Hyde Park, and still people litter. So one thing I always like to say, in order to keep these parks free and for us to keep enjoying these parks, please use the bins provided, or even better, take your rubbish home wherever possible, of course. But they've provided so many massive bins in the parks, and the Regent's Park and all the other big parks, and it is an important thing. But as well as feeding animals, just back to that, we actually have this sign: please don't feed the wildlife. You can see some of the effects over there. And these are not the only effects that there are. Now, we're slowly approaching the end. I only have a few more things to show you, but I have by no means shown you everything in the park. There is so much more to discover in this wonderfully amazing park. To give an example, we didn't talk about Henry VIII, we didn't talk about Charles I, Oliver Cromwell and the English Civil War in the park, and of course we didn't talk about Charles II and of course Queen Anne or Queen Mary II and King William III and their famous Rotten Row. And there's so much more we didn't mention about the park, and there's so many things to see as well in the park. We didn't see the Lido, or Lido, some people like to say it, but I do have a couple more amazing things to show you that I always show on the tour. And one of them is this waterfall, which is the thing I will leave you with, the last thing I will leave you with, the waterfall over here. But before we check out the waterfall, let's have a look at a very sad and touching part of the park. We are now in the Holocaust Memorial Gardens, where we have the final memorial that I wanted to show you right here. Another boulder in the Holocaust Memorial Garden. And we have an inscription from Lamentations: "For these I weep, streams of tears flow from my eyes, because of the destruction of my people." It's a very touching bit in the park. And of course it commemorates the 6 million plus Jewish people who were killed in World War II. And next to it is the fountain I promised you earlier. Now, as well as having this fountain, you have my favourite bench in Hyde Park, right there where that person's sitting. That is my bench. But this is my favourite bench because of the view of the waterfall, which I showed you the top of a few moments ago. But look at this, and remember, there is so much more to discover, explore and enjoy in the park. And when we do these videos, we don't want to show you everything, we just want to show you some of our favourite bits. We can't even show you all of our favourite bits, we'd be here forever. But just some of our favourite bits. And of course, do give us a follow, like, subscribe, etc. here on YouTube. We're also on the other socials, so if you're on them, do check us out, Wonders of London. But I've been Vincent from Wonders of London. Hope you've enjoyed this little video, and do have a lovely rest of your morning, afternoon, evening, etc. wherever you are. Bye!